Coxie, obviously a big game Friday night against Carlton. Really important to kind of get that home form back and get back in the winner's circle. How is the team feeling after last week's game against Essendon?
Yeah, obviously disappointed with the start of the game last week. Performed well after half time, but left our run short. And I think this week provides a huge opportunity. Friday night, SCG, Marn Grook, Go Foundation being the major sponsor. There's a lot for the footy club, the players and the footy team need to deliver on.
I know a lot's been made of the discipline, the 50-metre penalties. I guess you probably had a chance to review that now and go through that with the team. What was the big takeaway out of that? And I mean, I guess you're probably expecting a response in form of having that cleaned up this weekend.
Yeah, we haven't given away too many 50s until the weekend. I think the disciplinary thing, it's important that we know what the rules are and how they adjudicate them. So, and that was one thing that we wanted to make sure that obviously the stand rule's been in play for a long time, but once it happens once, we need to adjust pretty quickly about they are hot on it and we need to rectify that.
Was it clear from your perspective what the infringements were in each of those? Like, were they there, having reviewed that? Like, do you kind of get their penalties?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, and it's sort of some of the time the players say if they can or can't hear the umpires, that's probably the first thing. Is, well, if you know you're manning the mark, just have a look around. So from there, try and learn as much as we possibly can. And, but all reports they were there. Tommy slapped the ball out of someone's hand. That's always gets paid as a 50. So, yeah, we need to be better in that area.
Dean, it's every day you come into work, you can't avoid the brilliant statue of Goodsey. 2 years ago, he came into the footy club to open it. It's obviously 10 years since that game the statue's based on. How do you, the players and the staff, reflect on that game and the impact of Goodsey that is still obviously within this footy club?
Oh, he's had as big of impact on this football club as any player. I think with Adam, he still spends some time coming into the footy club, which is great to see. Everyone knows the impact he had on the game and what he stood for, which is an unbelievable thing for someone to stand up for what they believe in, and Adam did that. And, I think it's a great opportunity for the club, the broader AFL community with the Sir Doug Nicholls round as well, to be able to acknowledge the impact that Indigenous players have had on this great game. And that's not just the players that I played against or the ones that are currently playing. It's the generations that have allowed young kids the dream and hope to play AFL footy, and Adam certainly did that for so many people.
One thing, Michael Loughlin spoke really, really well to the Daily Telegraph, just about the impact that he has had on players and also within the club. He's been back to the club, as you say, it's great to have him around. What are the kind of things that he's doing here? Is he just even having him in here has an impact on the players at the moment?
Oh, for sure. And they've got, obviously Adam and Michael have the Go Foundation, which is under the roof of the headquarters here. So, the work that they do in the community for education, awareness, grants, everything that happens through that part is really significant. And here they're always in here, which is great as well because they're past champions of this football club who the players idolise. And a lot of the players, some of them still, when they first got drafted, Adam was here, and obviously seen him throughout that 10-year period as well.
Coxie, I don't want to sort of go back and talk about the negatives of the weekend, but it seems to me that slow start that was a little bit characteristic of a period last year as well, but you managed to snap out of it. What do you think that snap is that you need to then do now at this point of the season?
Yeah, I think probably the start was a little bit different to the week before. When we played the Giants, we kicked the first 5 goals. So, that's something that you always look at as a coach, is your messaging, the way it comes across, how do you do it, the timing of when you have your meetings, do you poke them? That's something that I'm always thinking about. At half time, it was an opportunity to reflect really quickly on the first half. As soon as they come off the ground, I got them straight into the rooms and spoke about what was happening, and then got them to break up into their lines, then come back together and come up with a plan about what the second half looks like. So, I think that's one thing being a head coach is you're always constantly thinking about your messaging, timing, how you do it. And, so responses you get, but we need to make sure that, first of all, the contest stuff against Carlton, that's where they're really, really efficient at, and they have been for a long time.
I mean, you've only had like 19 rounds as a first-year coach. Have you sort of been testing a lot of these different strategies and seeing what's worked and what's not?
Yeah, I do every week, do throughout the week. So when do you start it? How early do you do it? When do you review? How do you review? When do you start your prep with your players? Is it as soon as you finish your review? Do you wait a couple of days? So you try and reflect on everything that you've seen, you've done. Obviously, when you've been an assistant coach, and then try and work out where the players need it.
That full quarter game will probably be very important after the game that Carlton played against St Kilda. What do you make of that? I guess the grunt that they had, especially with the injuries.
Yeah, that was a great effort by them. We had a few of us there watching it. And the opportunity, I think, as any team has, when they do get depleted with some injuries throughout the game, to really rally. And, that's what we expect from Carlton this week. They're a really proud footy club. So are we. So that's why Friday night I can't wait for.
Does it sort of, bamboozle you that the week before the Giants, you had that great start against the Swans, and you've come against, going into this weekend kind of having a slow start? It's sort of just like here and there?
Yeah, it is, and that's also, a slow start. That's what we deliver, but it's not taking away from what other teams want to start well as well. So, we need to make sure that as soon as that ball's bounced, we're ready, because one thing you don't want to allow is to give an opposition team the head start.
2 years ago, you guys were 3-6. I think you're in a position lower than you are now. And still bounce back to make finals. Lots of injuries as well. There are a lot of people who are saying put a line through the Swans season already this year. But do you remain confident that there's a lot that can be gained out of this season, given that 2 years ago, arguably in a worse position, still bounce back?
Yeah, I always do. I think one thing I've always done throughout my footy career is always focus on what you can control. And one thing for us is about not looking at what happens 15 rounds down the track, about making sure my role is to get the players playing the best footy as quickly as they possibly can. So that's where my attention goes. Where that looks on the ladder or what happens from that, well, the process that we have to look after, we take care of, we'll look after the outcome. So we're still confident that our best footy, and we've shown, just not consistently, that we can match teams no matter where they sit. We've played a lot of teams in the 8 currently now, and we've actually performed well against them for periods, just not long enough.
A big injury update this week with Callum Mills listed as a test.
Yep.
Obviously, he hasn't played any senior football in a considerable amount of time. Is it more likely than not we'll see him come back to the VFL, or do you think he's someone who could come straight back in this week?
We've got to have a look at that at training tonight. And then from there with Callum, we've always said is we'll sit down with him following each session about what the next one looks like. And then this is the last one he needs to get through before he decides to play a game. So hopefully that can happen. And then the dynamic of what that looks like with the physios, medical staff about, is it restricted? We're going to work our way through that. So I don't like getting too far ahead before players actually tick off what they need to.
You mentioned he decides. Is the ball a little bit in his court about how he's feeling with his body as well then?
Well, I think you have to, when you've got an experienced player, you have to bring them into the conversation as well. So Callum's always been a part of that. Whether we push it, whether we wait, how he's going through that process. So that won't change.
He obviously came in.
Fair to say that's the same approach with Joel Marty this weekend.
Yeah, Joel's a little bit different. He's missed 4 weeks with a hamstring injury. So he's trained for a week and a bit. We expect if he can get through training today that he'll be available.
Do you take into account last season? Obviously, Callum, different season, different times, but he came straight in without the VFL. Obviously, later on got injured. He does have quite a big injury history. Do you look in that history, or it's just the here and now how he's going?
No, we look at everything. I think that's one thing you have to look at is what he did previously, when he come back, what injury was it from, compared to what he's done so far. So we need to look at all the metrics. It's a big decision for a footy club on your captain to get it right. So we need to make sure we get it right.
Taylor Adams obviously came back to the VFL last week. What did you make of his performance, and is it the sort of thing where you'd like to see him build up a body of work before he pushes, or given the kind of injury list and the maybe lack of senior experience with some of the guys on the sidelines, you'd like to get him back in sooner rather than not?
Yeah, I think one thing you find with the VFL, they probably didn't perform at the level that we needed them to as a team and a collective. So Taylor was a part of that. We need to make sure that he gets back to training fully. But speaking to him after the game, he was good to get through the first one, and now really confident in his body that he's available for selection. So, that's one thing we'll have to work out what it does look like.
And Angus Sheldrick, obviously, he spent a fair bit of time this year at the sub, but particularly in the past 2 weeks, it's felt like he's come on and had a really big impact. Is that something that you'd like to ideally kind of reward with a full game?
Yep. Yeah, I think at some stage we need to certainly look at that. The idea at the minute is the positions through the middle of the ground and where you can actually get a lot of your time. So, we need to make sure that previously, if James has been in there running with one of their midfielders, there's only 2 other spots. So, we want flexibility in our team, but also, as you mentioned, to be able to reward players that have been playing well as well.
And obviously, Carlton have quite a tall side. Is that something that, and kind of quite a bit of ruck versatility with DeConing, is that something that could see Pete really come back into considerations again this week?
Yeah, I think so. I think also, you talk about a lot of their backline. Haynes, Silvani plays tall. Obviously, Wiedering's been in great form. Then you got young Curnow, Harry as well. So, yeah, they do have a tall team, and the ability to be able to make sure we can mitigate their defenders, because they are the number 1 intercepting team across the comp. So we need to make sure that we can do that with the right matchups.
Dean, how do you find the balance between, you're obviously trying out combinations, it is your first year as a coach, I know you don't want to talk about the injuries, and just finding that set team and also competing for a final spot? Like, how do you find the balance? Because you do have to try combinations which might not work, but that's part of it.
Yeah, it is. And, they change each week. So, and that's one thing that, I want to make sure that we want to try and settle our team as much as we possibly can, as quickly as we can. How long that takes, it's still going to take a little bit of time, but that's all part of the challenge, and that's why you enjoy doing the job.
I'm interested to know, what do you think has been the biggest takeaway from this first part of the season for you? As a coach?
Yeah, I suppose probably the amount that you have to try and navigate your way through. And a lot of it's about players' form, emotional attachment to things. So that's probably something that I've really noticed. Not dealing with just your core little group of players, is to actually go through and make sure that everyone on the AFL list and VFL list is playing the way that we want them to play. That's the first part. And then, and then just the challenges that come day to day. There's something always that comes across your desk that you got to deal with. But it's the nature of the game. I knew what I was getting into.
Dean, you've obviously played for a club with great history of Indigenous footballers, and you've worked here. Just wondering, how do you reflect on it as the head coach of the Sydney Swans? It's a big night here. What does it mean to you personally?
It's a huge night. Of some of my closest teammates and people that I really admire have been Indigenous, and I just love what they bring to the game. To be able to put on a spectacle that they do, and I suppose the instinct that they play off. I've played some country football in remote areas of all the way through my childhood, and we were just in awe of the talent that they do have, and the ability to showcase that. I think as a footy club, it's an amazing opportunity to open, and certainly with Marn Grook, but the Sir Doug Nicholls round, and the 2-week period with a massive team on a Friday night. We'll make sure we respect everything that's come before us, but we're ready for Friday.
Mickey O'Loughlin spoke really warmly about the support the Sydney Swans have given him, and also Adam Goodes. It's great to hear he's around the club. As head coach, I imagine one day you hope that he'll be able to come back to the SCG and come to those games regularly.
Yeah, I think we want all our past players to be able to come back as often and as many times as they possibly can. So, no one differs from that. We understand their decisions that people have to make and work through, and we'll help them work through that.